In today's episode, we'll take a look at the plug-on transmitter for the EW-DP system. We're recording that right now using the Sennheiser MKH50 plugged into the SKP transmitter. That's transmitting to the EW-DP receiver on my Canon C70 and then routing directly into the camera. That's exactly what you're hearing through this entire episode. I already reviewed the EW-DP system with the body pack transmitter. I'll put a link for that down below so we can get straight on with the plug-on transmitter. So what is the SKP and what even does SKP stand for? I don't know what SKP stands for, but it is a plug-on XLR digital transmitter with dual analog to digital converters. And so it's able to support up to 134 dB of dynamic range. This is probably the closest thing to a 32-bit float wireless transmitter I've encountered or I've used in terms of actually not just recording, but also transmitting a very, very wide dynamic range. So that's really good. So this is also one way to think about this too. The EW-DP system is really a system that's it's designed for taking the audio from the receiver into a camera. That's its purpose. Can you bring it into an audio recorder? Of course you can, but it's really meant to go into a camera. So if you have XLR microphones and you want to get them into your camera, kind of simplify your setup, this is actually a pretty good way to do that. So with this plug-on XLR transmitter, you can get that XLR mic directly into your camera, even if your camera only has a 3.5 millimeter microphone input. Now, one thing that's very unique about the SKP and the EW-DP system is that there's no gain setting on the transmitter. You do not set gain on the transmitter. Let me say that again. No gain on the transmitter. That simplifies things, of course. And then what you can do is you can boost the levels with gain on the receiver if you choose to do that, or you can just leave it flat and go straight into your camera or recorder or whatever. But the great thing about that is that you're not going to clip the transmitter, most likely. If you're recording dialogue, even singing, you're probably not going to be able to clip the transmitter. It has the ability to support a really wide dynamic range. Now, in addition to that, you can record directly on the transmitter. There is a microSD card slot that can support microSD cards up to 1 terabyte. And it can record either in 24-bit or in 32-bit float, whichever you choose. And for those in the United States, you'll hear angels singing in just a moment here, but you can transmit and record on the transmitter at the same time. That is to say, you can wirelessly send audio to your camera and record on the transmitter to 32-bit float at the same time. So that's really, really quite nice. Now, this is a UHF wireless microphone system. So for all the consumer wireless microphone systems out there that use 2.4 gigahertz, this is substantially different. This gives you more flexibility and it gives you more reliability. So if you're working professionally, you probably need to start looking at a UHF system for your primary wireless microphone system. I think the 2.4 gigahertz are fine for backup systems when you're working professionally, but when you have to get the audio and you've got to solve the problems, 2.4 gigahertz won't always allow you to do that. UHF will, because you can tune the frequency you're working at. You can work around other wireless activity in the area. Now, it's a digital wireless system, fully digital. What does that mean in practical terms? The audio quality is substantially better than most analog systems. So that's a huge benefit. In addition to that, with digital wireless systems, you can pack in more channels of audio in a given amount of spectrum. So that also allows you to run more channels than you typically could with an analog system, or than you certainly could with a consumer 2.4 gigahertz wireless microphone system. Now, this is a little noisy, but we did do a distance test. I went across the basement, out the door, and then another 25 meters, and we held on to the signal the entire time. I also took it upstairs and across the entire house, back downstairs. So we went through at least one wall in each case. And 25 meters outside was with the receiver inside, 12 meters to the door, and then another 25 meters beyond that, no dropouts. So it's doing just fine in terms of distance. And that's impressive for an internal antenna. The system also includes a Smart Assist mobile app for both iOS and Android, and this allows you to control the transmitter and receiver. It allows you to do a scan on the receiver, set the frequencies, apply those settings to both the receiver and the transmitter via Bluetooth. It's really easy to use. I really quite like it. Powering the unit here, you can power with AA batteries, or there is also a proprietary Sennheiser lithium-ion rechargeable battery. With the nickel metal hydride rechargeable batteries that I use, the IKEA Lada, I'm able to get about 4.5 hours when I'm phantom powering a mic with this transmitter. And then if you use the Sennheiser lithium-ion rechargeable, you can get evidently up to about 6.5 hours. I have one of those batteries and I use it in the receiver just to get longer power time there. But 4.5 hours is going to work for me under most circumstances. And then they're user replaceable. I can swap them out with 2 more new rechargeable nickel metal hydride batteries. There's also a 3.5 millimeter locking input so that you can record lavalier microphones directly into this transmitter as well. So that gives it some flexibility. And as a digital system, every digital system has some amount of latency. That's the amount of time before you talk into the microphone before it gets to the receiver and is outputted. And in the case of the EW-DP system, it is 1.9 milliseconds, which is very good. So it is imperceptible, basically. You can't really tell if there's any latency at all. So that's really good. Now, there are a few things you should know. Some people might consider some of these cons. By the way, I didn't mention this earlier. I bought this system. I did the original EW-DP review. Sennheiser loaned it to me, and I sent it back when I was done. I've since bought a kit that includes a body pack transmitter, the SKP plug-on transmitter, plus the receiver. So I'm not making this review for anybody except for my own purposes and hopefully to help you a little bit. But a couple things to know, cons, if you will. The build is partly plastic, and the plastic feels, I think it's going to hold up pretty well. It's got some flex to it, but it feels pretty durable. The important parts are all metal. Of course, it feels like there's a metal frame, and the plug-on XLR connector is all metal, of course, as is the little locking nut. So that's all good. Just to be aware, it is not solid metal, and it needs to not be solid metal because the antenna is inside. So if it was all metal, then you'd have to have an external antenna, and I don't think anybody wants that with a plug-on transmitter. Another thing, you cannot capture the XLR and the 3.5 millimeter at the same time. So this is a mono transmitter. It's not a stereo transmitter, and you can either use the XLR connector or you can use the 3.5 millimeter connector, not both of them at the same time. One thing to note here, I don't think this is a con. I think it's just a part of the way the system is designed, and with the massive amount of headroom that you have and dynamic range, the recorded levels on the microSD card are pretty low. So they will need to be normalized in post, just so you're aware. But even with screaming into a condenser microphone, the Sennheiser MKH50, I was not able to get it to clip. So it's a pretty nice setup. In fact, as I use more systems and get experience with them, I learned some things. So I reserve the right to change my opinion, and I'm changing my opinion right here. I think a lot of people are under the impression that I think that the DEITY THEOS is the ultimate prosumer wireless microphone system. It is feature rich, I will say that. But I would, if I have to choose one today, a kind of a prosumer wireless microphone system, I would probably take a closer look at the EW-DP before the DEITY THEOS. Now, I know some people are going to say, Curtis, that doesn't make any sense. It's only a single channel receiver, and I have to stack 2 if I want to get dual channels, and it doesn't have time code, and on and on and on. But my experience is that the audio quality is so much better on the EW-DP system. And this plug-on transmitter is super nice too, because if I want to go super lightweight, for example, when I go to NAB each year and I want to do interviews with people, I can just use this as a recorder. I don't even have to transmit wireless. So I could just use my phone and the plug-on transmitter and have everything I need. So it's pretty flexible, but I think the big thing really for me is the audio quality is so much better. The wirelessly transmitted audio quality is substantially better. Another thing too, this system uses less spectrum per channel than the DEITY THEOS system. So that's an important thing too. So if I've got to stack more channels in, also, this is weird, but I've experienced some intermodulation with the DEITY THEOS system. If you bring in more than 2 channels, I started noticing some intermodulation, which you can probably work with because it's a digital system, but it was messy. It just was not nearly as refined as I'm finding this system to be. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Get out there and make some great sound, and we'll talk to you again soon.